They didn't just trespass on my land. They ripped a trench straight through my grandfather's grave to lay pipe for a luxury golf course that had no business in a place like this. Picture it. Dawn, that cold Wyoming kind of dawn, lights spilling across a raw, open wound in what used to be a wildflower meadow, diesel and dust swirling, sage roots ripped up, everything sacred turned upside down. Grandpa Thaddeus's bronze memorial plaque, crushed like a beer can and tossed in a pile of dirt. I confronted the HOA president, Vivian Straude, right there at the site, but she didn't even bother to look up from her phone. Her acrylic nails clicked against the glass, dead calm as a lizard sunning on a rock. "We followed every legal channel, darling," she said, all mock sympathy, and laughed. "Show me a death certificate. Ashes aren't legally interred." That's the moment I realized she'd made the kind of mistake you don't walk back from. See, what she didn't know. I spent 15 years knee-deep in water contracts for the Denver District Court. Out here, whoever controls the water writes the rules. 3 months after that little showdown, I owned the creek that fed her whole fancy gated community. Eminent domain cuts both ways. You ever have an HOA steamroll you? Let me know where you're watching from, because my name's Marlo Coltrane, but you can call me Marley. And 3 years back, I came home to Fremont County, Wyoming, to inherit 240 acres of high desert my grandfather started carving out of nothing in 1948. The man built everything. House, barn, that battered windmill still cussing in the wind. Knew every spring, every low spot that flooded come April, every inch of land like some folks know him. He was part Shoshone, and he could read the ground the way other men read people. When I was 9, he sat me at the kitchen table and taught me how to read survey maps, burnt coffee in the air, that big calloused hand tracing property lines. "Land doesn't lie, Marley," he'd say. "People do." He passed in 2019. I scattered his ashes under a cottonwood grove at sunrise. No headstone, just wind and meadowlarks. Exactly how he wanted. 15 years I worked as a water rights paralegal. Good career, bad marriage. In 2021, after everything fell apart, I cashed out, packed up, and came home to bring the ranch back to life. Rotational grazing, restoring native grass, setting up a small beef CSA. Turns out, land can heal you if you let it. And then Ridgemont Estates happened. Spring 2023. I'm walking my fence line, and suddenly there's a string of orange survey stakes running straight through Grandpa's grove, like a trail of warning flares. No letter, no knock, just cold disregard. At the county clerk's office, I learned Ridgemont filed for private condemnation weeks ago. The notification went to a P.O. box I'd closed 2 years back. Classic play. So here's what Ridgemont is: a gated sprawl of 2,200 homes, 3 miles east, former BLM land. Artificial lakes, 18-hole golf course, McMansions that start at $850,000. They use more water on their grass than 40 ranches put together, pulled from Clearstone Reservoir, which was built for farmers, not fairways. Now they wanted a dedicated pipeline, right through my land. And because of a shady Wyoming statute, they could claim easement if there was no viable alternative, which was a crock. For $200,000 more, they could have run it along the county road. But that would mean negotiating instead of steamrolling. Vivian Straude, queen of the HOA, drove a white Lexus, vanity plate, RULZ, poured over barbed wire. When I found their construction schedule taped to the marble clubhouse wall, the start date was 3 days out. I tried to reason with her. You know how that went. So Friday night, I walked back out to the cottonwoods. Survey fence already circled 2 acres of wildflowers. The pipeline cut straight through where Grandpa's ashes lay. I sat in the dirt, let myself grieve for 5 minutes, then called Hector Ruiz, my old water law partner. I told him I needed an emergency injunction by Monday, because Vivian had seriously miscalculated. She thought I was just a woman alone against an HOA with a team from Jackson Hole. But I knew the loopholes in Wyoming water law better than they did, and that weekend, coffee and court documents became my whole life. We filed an emergency TRO citing improper service, and because of Grandpa's Shoshone heritage, we pulled in the Native American Graves Protection Act. Saturday night, I was crawling through my attic for documents, land patents, tribal enrollment, Grandpa's discharge from Anzio. Sunday afternoon, Hector filed the order. Judge Vernon Kemp, fourth-gen rancher who hated corporate bullies, scheduled a hearing for Monday. Monday, we faced Ridgemont's lawyers, three sharks in suits, swaggering in like they owned the joint. Their geologists swore no marked graves existed. Their anthropologists said Grandpa's tribal enrollment didn't count on this side of the state. And then, the kill shot. Excavation started Friday, Your Honor. The trench is already open. Judge Kemp looked gutted, but he had to admit they'd started within their legal window. He denied our TRO. I could appeal if I had $75,000 for a bond, which I didn't. Back home, a backhoe was already chewing into my cottonwoods. The foreman handed me Grandpa's bent plaque. First scoop, he whispered, sorry. Meadowlarks were silent for the first time I could remember. But I noticed something on the survey map. Ridgemont's water allocation came from a public reservoir, and their usage had to be renewed every decade. Their last renewal was a decade ago. Turns out, their contract was hanging by a thread, and I found the clause buried in the records. Use more than 500 acre-feet. You have to renegotiate every 10 years, or the whole deal's void. Vivian retaliated fast. Suddenly, every Ridgemont homeowner got an email blaming me for threatening their water. I got hate calls, voicemails. Some lady cornered me in the grocery store. My kids can't shower because of you. That same night, someone cut 40 feet of my fence. Cost me $1,200 in cattle impound fees. Then Ridgemont's lawyers slapped me with a $250,000 lawsuit for construction delays, trying to bankrupt me. But late one night, eyes burning from county records, I stumbled on the real twist. Ridgemont's water rights had never been renewed, and their main man on the watershed board, Dalton Straught, had voted yes on every allocation. Dalton just happened to be Vivian's brother. Never disclosed it. Now, that's a major ethics violation, so I called Hector and we filed a formal complaint. During the investigation, all allocations froze. I started rallying allies, a retired hydrologist named Iris Pendleton, who'd spent decades fighting water abuse, and a reporter from the Casper Star-Tribune who lived for stories like this. Gil Navarro, a third-generation rancher, told me Vivian tried to buy his land. He refused, and the county hiked his taxes 32% a month later. He and a handful of others promised quiet support. Money, testimony, whatever it took. Iris built a hydrology model showing Ridgemont drained more water than 40 ranches tie. The reporter uncovered the HOA's bond, $4.2 million, secured by their amenities. If they lost water, the bank could seize everything. We made sure that story hit the front page. I launched a GoFundMe, called it a fight for family ranchers against corporate overreach. Donations poured in, stories from folks who'd lost their land to developers. But I needed leverage. That's when Iris pointed out that the senior water rights to Antler Creek, a source feeding a third of Clearstone, were up for sale. Priority date? 1904. If I bought those rights, I could cut Ridgemont off at the source. Problem was, I needed $85,000 and only had $22,000. So I sold off a chunk of my herd, gutting my operation for years. Gil showed up with a $6,000 check. Pay me back when Ridgemont's dead. That gave me just enough. August 10th, I closed the deal. The senior rights were mine. Now, with the complaint filed, Ridgemont's allocation froze, and their bond teetered on default. Vivian showed up with an envelope, $150,000 hush money, NDA and all. I told her to get off my land. She lost the syrupy tone, looked me dead in the eyes. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Marlowe. I've buried people for less. Was it a threat? I didn't flinch. Next came anonymous complaints, overgrazing, regulatory inspectors, smear op-eds painting me as an eco-terrorist. Someone torched my hay barn, $60,000 up in smoke. I called Hector. If I quit now, Grandpa's grave means nothing, I told him. He drove up from Denver, shotgun in tow, and stood guard while I finished my filings. Vivian's lawyers tried a last-minute Hail Mary, claimed my water rights would violate interstate commerce because Clearstone connects to Colorado. The judge laughed them out of court. With the paperwork finalized, all that remained was the watershed board meeting. Ties expose on Dalton dropped the day before, documented every unethical vote. The room was packed. Ranchers, HOA residents, news crews. Board chair Eugene Kfax, a weathered old rancher, cut straight to it. Ridgemont's lawyers spun their case. Vivian pleaded for the children. Our side rolled out the facts, hydrology maps, tax reassessments, ethics violations. When Ty laid out Dalton's undisclosed conflict, the room erupted. Dalton tried to defend himself. Eugene shut him down. Statute doesn't care about relevance. It requires disclosure. You broke your oath. Dalton resigned on the spot. The verdict? Ridgemont's allocation suspended until they installed $1.2 million in conservation infrastructure. My senior water rights, recognized and approved. Vivian stormed out, photographers catching her flipping the bird. Picture went viral in an hour. The aftermath hit like a landslide. Ridgemont's bond defaulted. Emergency HOA meeting, residents demanding answers. Vivian resigned, skipped town. Dalton's under ethics investigation. The new board, desperate, assessed every homeowner $2,800 for the reclamation project. Uproar, recall petitions, the whole mess. But not every Ridgemont resident was the enemy. When I rebuilt my barn, a dozen families showed up to help. Hammered nails, hauled lumber, apologized. By winter, the barn was better than before, insurance and GoFundMe covering what was needed. Vivian's old landscaping guy got arrested for burglary, admitted she paid him to scare me. She was indicted for conspiracy to commit arson. Trial set for spring. Ridgemont's golf course, now half-native prairie, thanks to Iris. Water draw cut in half. Board finally acting like stewards instead of pirates. I got invited to speak at their clubhouse, stood in the same marble lobby where Vivian once rolled her eyes at me, and talked about what Grandpa taught me. Water is a public trust. They listened. Some even apologized. It didn't fix the past, but maybe it started something better. Best of all, I partnered with the Eastern Shoshone tribe. Antler Creek's water now split for conservation and drought reserve, a model for the rest of the state. GoFundMe leftovers became the Antler Creek Scholarship, 2 local kids a year, studying water law at UW. We started a water festival, fly fishing, native plant sales, commemorative beer. Thaddeus's memorial plaque, mounted on river stone, surrounded by wildflowers planted by Ridgemont volunteers and tribal youth. The inscription reads, "He taught us water flows where it's needed most." So yeah, the land remembers everything. People like Vivian think they can bury the past to build their future, but out here, the ground always tells the truth. I didn't win because I was richer or meaner or better connected. I won because I had something real to fight for and people who'd stand beside me. Because I knew the rules better than the ones who thought they made them up. Because water doesn't lie, and neither does justice if you let it flow. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment with your worst HOA nightmare. The petty tyrants, the fees, the rules that only ever seem to apply to you. Let's drag these stories out into the sunlight, where folks like Vivian can't hide anymore. And hit that subscribe button. Next week, I'll tell you how a small-town librarian used an 1870s mining claim to shut down a rogue Bitcoin operation that was stealing half a county's electricity. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. The fight for what's right never really ends. It just finds new battlefields. If you know the land, know the law, and know your people, you can win. I'm living proof.